That's another one.
Keep telling me to make it longer here or tier us one of the two, like stadium seating so we can. Yeah, trust me. It's been like this ever since. It's a good thing we like each other, otherwise we have problems. They are. Some people went home sick today. My wife. Really? My wife called him 1:30. Pick up. I said, tonight I have a park board meeting. She said, okay, I'll go get him. I don't know yet. Let's give it a go.
No? Will the December 16th Des Moines Park and Recreation Board please come to order? Rebecca, will you please call the roll?
Nolan,
Here.
Ogle,
Here.
Club,
I can't hear.
Acto,
Yes.
Kenny Vanderhaar,
Yes.
Davis,
Here.
Hassick,
Here.
Janza, here, Scavo,
Here.
Thornton, Thornton,
Here.
He's here.
Rogers,
Here.
Bozen,
Here.
Simonson.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Let's look at the agenda first. Do we have approval of the agenda as presented or as amended? We have a couple of board members that would need to leave a little bit early this evening, so if it's agreeable with everyone, I would like to move to board action before the director's report.
I would move the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Let's quickly look at the minutes from the November 26th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval as submitted?
Move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do I pass since I wasn't here? I have passed since I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay, let's go on for board action, and we would like to open the hearing for the naming of the Union Park East and West shelters. The time is 5:04. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak about the naming of the shelters? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing and move for board comments. Are there any comments from the board? Carol?
I'd like to mention that Margaret Swanson's daughters are here, Jeannie Swanson Dungy and Mara, or Martha Swanson, and we're pleased to have them here today.
Could they raise their hands so we can see who they are?
Could you raise your hands?
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you for being here.
No new information from last time. Staff recommendation is for approval, and we believe it's a very honorable thing to do, and it makes good sense for the city. Two great leaders of our community that we can recognize and do some nice things at Union Park with.
Carol, do you have anything else to add to those comments?
No, the Union Park Neighborhood Association is very much behind this and are really excited that this is hopefully going to come to fruition.
Do I have a motion from the board for...
I'd make a motion that we do the board action according to staff recommendation.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Nolan,
Yes?
Ogle.
Yes.
Club,
Yes.
Acto.
Yes.
Kenny Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Hassick.
Yes.
Janza.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Bozen.
Yes.
Simonson.
Yes.
A week from tonight is the city council meeting. We intend to take this recommendation on that night, the 23rd of December. For those that are interested that want to be there, that will be the final governing body that will look at this and make the determination. So December 23rd, 5 o'clock, this room.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item B, the hearing for the naming of the Rotary River Park. We would like to open that up for public hearing again. It is 5:05.
Good evening. My name is John Bauslug. I'm an attorney here in Des Moines. And I have with me Phil Hodgen and Jessica Fernandez from RDG Design Architectural Firm. We have just a few minutes of a presentation, if we may. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Des Moines AM. There are about a dozen Rotary clubs in central Iowa, and Phil Hodgen and I have been out to visit with all of them in the last this year, and we've invited them all to participate in this historic project. We're here as a representative of 7 of those clubs. As I indicate, Phil and I are both members of the Des Moines AM Club, but also the Rotary Club of Des Moines, the Rotary Club of Northwest Des Moines, the Rotary Club of West Polk County, the Rotary Club of West Des Moines, the Rotary Club of Waukee, the Rotary Club of Adel, and also we all are in District 6000. All those organizations have committed financially to make this project successful. This project started in 2005. You may wonder, say to yourself, what has taken you 8.5, almost 9 years to get this done? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit, in a very brief fashion, why it's taken us so long and why we're here tonight. In 2005 was the 100th anniversary of Rotary International, and there are about 1.5 million Rotarians around the world. Also in 2005, it happened to coincide with the 125th anniversary of Principal and making their gift to the city with regard to the new Riverwalk. And during the 100th anniversary of Rotary, our international president challenged every club to do a project above and beyond what had ever dreamed possible. And so this was our dream in 2005, and we've worked hard since 2005. From 2005 to 2008, we did a lot of fundraising, and we did a lot of design work. Then we had a little economic issue in 2009, and our economy turned down significantly, and we kind of back-burnered the project. We shelved it for a few years and waited for things to turn around. In 2012, we dusted off our plans and finished our fundraising and finished our design work. And I'm going to have Phil and Jessica talk a little bit about the design as it is proposed. Rotary's motto is service above self. And as Rotarians, we look for opportunities to do things for our communities where we're located, to not only for our own personal fulfillment, but to help the communities where we are located and have our clubs. We believe that this donation, again, we've raised in that 8.5-year period in excess of $500,000. And as we went through the design process, we knew that, again, the city of Des Moines is something special to all of us. We wanted this playground to be very special, something that unlike any other playground in the world. We think that, I was looking at the Brenton Skating Plaza, and it was getting busy as I was walking in here this evening. We believe that the Rotary Riverwalk Park will become a destination location, just like the Brenton Skating Plaza is for 4 months a year. We hope and pray that Rotary Riverwalk Park will be a destination location for many people, whether they are Des Moines residents or they live in the suburbs, to come downtown Des Moines and enjoy the Riverwalk. So, having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Hodgen, who's in charge of this project on behalf of RDG, and he'll show you our current design plans, and then I'll come back and make a couple of last comments.
There it is. Well, thank you and good evening. And Jessica and I stand at the ready to answer any of your questions. At the last meeting, we made a brief presentation. I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, but we're very excited, very happy. Costing and design is coming along together at the same moment, and with your permission and approval, we'll continue to go through the process to get this built. It's very exciting. It's a giant bobber on the end of a fishing pole coming out of the bank along the Des Moines River, and we've got some boardwalk with stamped concrete. We've got a nice soft landing ground from the places where the children will come off the swings or off the bobber itself. We'll have some nice signage that matches all the signage that's going on with the Principal Riverwalk, and then a rotary four-way test etched into the retaining wall that's along the sidewalk that already exists and then extends back through our park. So We're very excited about it. We'll answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.
I must say, we applaud your efforts for continuing, even though you had a little slowdown there for a time. I'm glad you went on and continued your efforts to make this possible.
Thank you very much. Again, we always have believed this is to be a very worthwhile project, and thanks to Phil's help, and I saw Kevin Tubbs walk in as well. He's representing Graham Construction. They'll be the contractor on the project. But we are where we are legally. I see Ann back behind there. Received an email from Ann just within the last couple of weeks, I believe. A few minor tweaks to the agreement. We're fine with those tweaks, with just a couple other tweaks. But nothing in there that's of any concern, I think, from our perspective or the city's. So again, we thank you for your time, and we would ask your approval and recommendation to the City Council. Thank you.
John, just for the viewing audience and those that may not have the written communication, would you talk about the value of the gift? I think that's very substantial and significant to the city. I want to make sure everybody understands what that value is.
The value is $500,000. That, again, was the joint effort of all the 7 clubs that I noted earlier. And without any of them, if one club would have pulled out or not participated, this wouldn't be happening. So it's key for all these clubs. Even though our club started the project, we couldn't get it done alone. We proved that. It took us 8 years, or 6 years, or 6.5 years to figure that out. But we finally figured it out. We reached out to other Rotary clubs in this community, and we've been warmly received. And they again stepped up with their checkbooks and are able to allow us to meet the $500,000 that we needed in order to build this.
So timeline, we're working with the Rotary, and our goal is over the next few months, if not sooner, to be on the City Council agenda, presuming you have a favorable motion here. And we'll take that forward, and then construction would start as soon as the weather would allow, if we could hit those guidelines or
Correct.
timelines.
We anticipate construction being once the ground breaks or thaws in the spring, with a ribbon cutting sometime in the summer.
Thank you for being here again this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make any comments or to come forward? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing at 5:12 and open it back to the board if there's any questions from the board or any comments.
I just love the creativity of the bottom. That's one.
Do I have a motion from the board to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Rebecca, will you call the roll, please?
Nolan,
Yes?
Ogle.
Yes.
Clubb,
Yes.
Pacto,
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Passick,
Yes.
Yanza,
Yes.
Scavo,
Yes.
Thornton,
Yes.
Feltner,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Boson,
Yes.
Simonson.
Yes.
Thank you. A unanimous decision.
That was an easy one.
Moving on to item C, the Southwest 5th Street Jackson Bridge and the First Street bridges. Ben, would you like to, we've done a few changes since our last meeting, and maybe if you could just highlight the synopsis of what we're looking at?
I'd be glad to. We've listened to the comments from the public, and we've listened to the members of our park board that asked for some changes. And for those without a communication in front of you, I'll provide you a synopsis, and if you want the full communication, it is online, or we can make arrangements to get you one. But let me just highlight these to help you start your conversation, and we'll go from there. Remember, this was the story of 2 bridges, so we recommended 2 things. One was to budget capital improvement funding of $1,080,000 to repair the Southwest First Street Bridge, which is the bridge closest to the confluence. Number 2, to historically restore the Southwest 5th Jackson Street Bridge and to establish safety standards for pedestrian bridges. And we have 6 contingencies here. We want to make sure they're very clear for everybody. This is where the details are. Number 1, that the city would put $750,000 of City of Des Moines taxpayer dollars into the project. Number 2, engineers, not only city engineers, but the private sector engineers that are going to be helping would indicate structural feasibility for restoration, following an in-depth second engineering analysis that would build upon the report that was already completed by Chuck Briston on behalf of the city. Number 3, engineers develop a cost estimate or estimates for restoration of the bridge. Number 4, city staff and stakeholders determining the financial feasibility of the bridge's restoration. So what that means is, if the numbers come in far and above than what I've already estimated at $3.74 million, it gives everybody, city staff and stakeholders, a way to gracefully say that maybe that's just too much money, or maybe it's less. Number 5, stakeholders developing a fundraising plan to utilize private, nonprofit, or other state and federal special appropriation funds for the balance of the funds needed. And the last bullet point, fundraising being completed within 18 months after completion of a more detailed cost estimate. If fundraising efforts are not successful or the cost estimate is beyond an amount that the stakeholders feel is reasonable to obtain, the city will utilize the $750,000 for demolition of the bridge. So I think that's probably the best way for us to start the conversation tonight and let the members of the public ask questions. And
Yeah, maybe before we do that, may I just make a little bit more background for folks that are here on this issue, and maybe just for our information, how many of you are here on this issue today? I just ask you to raise your hand. Since the last Park and Rec Board meeting, there's been a lot of discussion with individual members of the council, with members of the city staff and city manager's office. There's been some meetings held, also included members of the Iowa legislature, Senator Matt McCoy, and kind of culminated with a executive committee meeting of the Park and Rec Board in which Chris Hensley with City Council and the city manager was also present. Or was it? Chris Coleman. Apologize. Was in a prior meeting, I think.
yes.
And Paul and I both have had a lot of communication on this issue. I sense there was a real desire on behalf of the city manager's office to emphasize that they wanted to be a partner in restoring the bridge. They've certainly got a lot of feedback, as City Council has. I think I want to thank people in advance for the work you've already done to publicize this effort. I think the thing that came out of it me was, you know, the city wants to be a partner in restoring this bridge, but they seem pretty solid that the city's financial commitment is going to be that $750,000. And so whatever that gap is, we're going to have to fundraise to come up with that difference. As it was pointed out, the last Park and Rec Board meeting, that preliminary study was a pretty preliminary study on the condition of that bridge, and it was agreed that there's going to be a follow-up study that's more extensive. They might actually have to, destroy some of the concrete casing to look under that bridge and see exactly what the condition of it is. We really don't know right now what the stress load is on that bridge, and we really don't know what it would take to really restore it. Hopefully they'll come back and it'll be a figure well below what those higher estimates were. We've also had some initial conversations with members of our corporate community, and I think there's going to be strong corporate support for this effort. But we're going to need your involvement, the public's involvement to make this happen. I'm confident we can get there, but there is a fair amount of work ahead of us to get the job done. Now, this 18-month deadline really is 18 months from the date that second study comes back, which might be this summer. And that's not going to be a hard deadline. If 18 months from then, the fundraising is 3/4 of the way there, and as long as it's in sight, I think we're gonna be okay. But the city did not want this, I think, to hang out there indefinitely. I don't know if, Paula, you've been involved in this in some meetings too, if you want to do add any additional comment.
No, Lloyd, I think you, thank you. Don't know how to work the mic. Thank you. I think you summarized it very well. I'd just like to thank everybody for getting their comments to their city council people and their park board members, because this would not have happened without you. And I'd like to thank the Des Moines Historical Society. I see Sarah's here, been a big part in this. Bike Iowa, pedestrians, people. It's interesting how many people from all different types of backgrounds and interests have gotten behind this bridge. Bridge hunters, it's just amazing. And so we'd like to just urge you to keep that enthusiasm up, because when this study's over, and by the way, Jensen Construction and Meredith are paying with their own dollar to bring these people in. and really appreciate that, too. So once they give us the estimate, then we're all going to have to really ramp it up again and get interest to get some donations for this bridge. But thank you to everybody for contacting your elected officials, because I can tell you we would not have been able to do it without that. So thank you.
Do we have members from the public that would like to speak this evening? And if you would, how many of you would like to speak this evening? Okay. So we'll have maybe 3 to 5 minutes for each person. If you would like to line up against the side of the room, we can get started with that public comments.
One more question. Ben, could you define a stakeholder for me?
Well, it depends. Anybody that's interested would be the first way to define the
Okay.
stakeholders.
Right.
I think we'll work together with the park board to define that group
Okay.
as best as possible, so we all feel like we're on the same page, just like we've done here the whole time.
When you come to speak, if you would state your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Courtney Johnson. I live at 4925 Franklin Avenue in Des Moines, Iowa. I am an 18-year-old senior at Roosevelt High School. Over the last year, I have followed my father as he photo documented the demolition of the historical 1887 Railroad Trestle Bridge over the Des Moines River south of the Scott Street Dam, which once carried the mighty trains of the Chicago Great Western Railroad. For over 126 years, the bridge stood proud.
Is the overhead
Do
working?
you want to use the overhead, Courtney, or do you want to pass those on?
Sure.
We'll turn it on for you, and you can just switch them out, you'll see.
Okay,
I'll help if you want to send them a question for you. Be your media.
thank you. This bridge was completely destroyed and sent to the scrap yard and erased from our visual history. It now only lives in photo images and a few pieces of 126-year-old scrap iron and rivets. It is said by many to pay it forward. I believe that we need to pay our history forward as well for future generations. My future children and grandchildren will have only these photos and images and pieces of iron to represent this once beautiful historical railroad bridge in Des Moines. It is my hope that the same does not happen to the 1898 Jackson Avenue wagon bridge, and that one day I will be able to walk with my children across this bridge because its history was recognized and saved from demolition by the city. Let's all join in paying the history forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Are there any questions for Courtney?
Yeah, Courtney, did you put that presentation together yourself? You did an excellent job. I'm glad to see high school kids getting involved in that, and I salute you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more comment. Courtney's one of our all-star employees in the summertime. She works for us, very hard worker, very, very good example of what Des Moines has going for it when it comes to youth. I'm proud that you were able to do this tonight, so good job.
Thank you.
Courtney, who was your father that you mentioned?
Chris C.J. Johnson.
Oh, see, that's what I wondered, because CJ has been a tireless worker on this project and a wonderful photographer. So when we start fundraising, we hope that you'll take some pictures for us and get the word out there. Thank you.
Oh, she's a writer.
Yeah. He's a wonderful photographer.
Hi, I'm Jerry Haydenfeld. I'm here for Meredith Corporation, 1716 Locust Street, Des Moines, Iowa. As you are well aware, the bridge is part of the Meredith Trail, and we want to make sure that it stays that way if we can, if it's at all feasible. And it may be a little premature to talk about deadlines at this point because we don't know how long it's going to take for a fundraising effort, but this trail is obviously special to Meredith Corporation, and it was a tribute to Ted Meredith, and we put over $1 million into it already, and we would like to see the bridge remain a part of that. I think you're going to hear a lot of comments, and you have already a lot of comments from people that recognize the historical significance of this for local businesses and for the people in the south side. And part of the reason that the bridge is part of the trail is because it was a connection to the south side. And we think that's important too. So I think I agree with everything that I heard about the recommendations, except perhaps the time limit for fundraising. If we have a short session here, we don't know what we're going to get for the state help on this. 18 months sounds like a little short to me for any federal grants that may be available. And that, in my experience, that's kind of a long, drawn-out process, no matter how soon you apply. So I would ask you to reconsider maybe the 18 months recommendation, and we think 3 years would be a better time frame because the bridge isn't scheduled to be demolished until 2017, so that gives us a little more time and a couple of sessions to deal with both the federal and state side of this. But we appreciate very much the city's local contribution, which is very generous. And we're waiting to see what this reevaluation will decide and whether rehabilitation is feasible or not, and if so, how much. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
I'm Rosanna Olson. My address is 100 Market Street, Des Moines, Iowa. I just want to keep it short and thank everybody, especially Ben Page and Mindy Moore, for providing me with 20 years of inspection reports for the bridge. I didn't think I'd be able to get it that quick, but we haven't had a chance to really look over everything, but I really feel like everybody's working together on this project now, and it's just fantastic to see everybody here supporting this effort. And I want to thank especially the Parks and Rec Board for whatever efforts you've put into this. And I think we're all moving forward now in a positive direction. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosanna.
I'll keep it short as well. My name is Isabel Osias, and I live at 118 Water Street. And one of the reasons I live there is because of the wonderful recreational opportunities in downtown Des Moines, including the bridge. And I applaud you for stepping back, taking another look, and deciding to, give it another try. I really admire your flexibility and your openness to that. I would also point out that I hope that when the stakeholders are defined, Ben, that they do include the public.
Absolutely.
Great. I'm assured to hear that. And finally, I wanted to make just 2 quick points. One is that I was very moved by Vincent Scavo's description of the meaning of the bridge to immigrants, and have since had an opportunity to meet one of those men who remembers walking over the bridge on Saturday mornings to farmers market, because he was one of those South Side people, and remembered had all the meaning behind that bridge. Finally, I would like to just make a point that I don't think has come up before, and that is the Meredith Trail is a gem. However, it has a weakness, and the weakness is entry points. You either go in at First Street or you go in down at Grays Lake. As we add more and more people downtown, if we get to our goal of 10,000 people, we need more entry points to that trail. And I know that's part of your future planning, but that's money and that's years. We have an entry point. That's the 5th Street Bridge, and I think that's another reason to consider for keeping that bridge. So thank you so much for all the work you guys have done. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to speak? How about any other further comments from the board?
Or at least ask them.
Comments, questions?
I have a comment.
Uh-huh.
I kind of agree with Jerry. I do agree with Jerry on that 18-month situation. If we are, in fact, we do not have it scheduled for demolition until when, Ben?
Fiscal year 17, which would be July.
Okay. Maybe the point that he is raising is because of grant applications and things like that, and that's a slow-moving process, maybe the 18 months. If I'm reading this right, the 18 months starts after the completion of the survey, of the bridge survey. Is that correct, or not survey of?
That's correct. So that would put us about 2 years from right
Uh-huh.
now out. And we look at this from the perspective of, I think Board Member Ogle had it right on the head here earlier, was that if there's substantial effort in the right direction, then I think the city council, and I don't vote and I don't sit on the city council, obviously, but I think they would be very interested in listening to keeping this moving forward. However, liability speaking, we have a liability right now. We have a closed bridge that's right now, with the first report, deemed unsafe for the public. And we have people that are unfortunately cutting the fence down and using it. We need to be on record of a timeline of some sort. I really wouldn't be very nervous as a collective group about 18 months. It helps fundraise, by the way, too, because if you have a date that's a finalized date, it helps you raise money at a certain point. Again, you're the board, you can make your own recommendation. I just don't see it as a big issue.
Okay. What about a graduated fundraising situation, like say at 12 months we should have this much money in place, and at 18 months then have this much money?
I would keep it more open, to be frank with you, because that way you have more flexibility. I think as a city, when you put something in writing, you're kind of held to that, no matter what, whether what side of the fence you sit on. You want to see somebody hit that goal.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And I also, have concerns about bullet F, fundraising being completed within 18 months. Would there be any possibility that the staff recommendation could be amended to say substantial fundraising within 18 months after completion of the?
I think that's something I can live with.
Okay, let's do that.
Because I think that would get us there. I mean, obviously, 18 months after completion of that more detailed study is, a year and a half from this summer. So
Definition, your definition.
That's good.
I would think that it would at least be underway substantially by that point. So the clarification would be under F to change the language to from fundraising being completed within 18 months to substantial fundraising within 18 months.
Substantial is pretty ambiguous, though, what is substantial?
And I think that's why Lloyd said that. Because I would say substantial, and of course we'd have to define it if it really got to that, but over 50% is substantial, or maybe it's over 80, but I think that's the beauty of substantial, that we're making a concerted effort and we're within sight of the end, however you want to. It gives us some flexibility. There was discussion in executive committee about the short time limit, and the city manager said, look, if you're working hard and everybody's trying to collect money, we're certainly not going to slam it off because the 18-month mark is here. But that they did need, and a grant will kind of want some indication, but I like putting substantial there because that isn't, okay, bang, you have to have the whole thing in 18 months. If we've got a federal grant pending or a state grant, then we could still do it.
If you've got positive momentum going, as much action as I've seen here, again, the city council makes these decisions. I think they're really interested in seeing us go. So I would think substantial covers you. I wouldn't worry about the details as a recommendation type board. I let them worry about those details.
Ben, I agree with the substantial. I think that's very important, but I would feel a little more comfortable with 24 instead of 18. Just as, knowing things that have happened in the past and the way things have gone, if that does not offend you.
It doesn't offend me one bit. It's just that this is kind of a communication. We've worked very hard behind the scenes with the parties to make sure we bring it forward. So if we can keep it at 18 months, I think you've got the best momentum. 24 isn't a deal breaker, but I think 18 months would really help. Again, positive momentum is not going to derail this. But if there's no momentum, then we need to make the decision sooner than later.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that all right?
All right.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Lloyd?
I just, the board got a communication from Larry Bratzhall, the president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I'm just going to read that real quick. December 8, 2013, the Downtown Neighborhood Association of Des Moines Board would like to provide our letter of support for the effort to save the Jackson Street Bridge, 5th Street pedestrian bridge. This bridge is an important part of our downtown trail infrastructure and is part of providing a better quality of life for all those who live downtown Des Moines. Please consider our support in this effort.
Do I have a motion from the board to accept the recommendation from the staff?
So moved.
Second?
Now, is that with the insertion of substantial as a friendly?
A friendly amendment?
Yes.
Friendly amendment. I would second the friendly amendment.
I see Minnie's out there making notes, so we'll change that.
Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Nolan.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Club.
Yes.
Pacto.
Yes.
Kenny Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Passick.
Yes.
Danza.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Feltner.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Boson.
Yes.
Simonson.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a unanimous vote.
So timeline, again, this is scheduled to appear next Monday night, City Council, this room, City Hall, 5 o'clock. I'm not sure what's all on the agenda, so it'll be sometime between, they start the meetings around 4:30, and depending on how long the agenda is, it could be after 5 with the hearings we have. So this is scheduled to be on at 5 o'clock next Monday.
So any of you that have concerns, please be available at city council times. Thank you.
And I can't emphasize enough and thank everyone here and Meredith Corporation included that this is one of those times where your efforts, I think, really made a difference. And we sure are going to appreciate the partnership and working with you on preserving this bridge for our future.
Yes, thank you to the public for participating tonight. We really do appreciate you being here. Moving on. Item D.
There's one change in item D from the last time you saw it, is I told you we had been working with a field use permit. It's a brand-new fee for us. What it is when different groups, most likely a sporting group, would like to reserve and guarantee they have a spot, we had proposed originally $5 per hour per field. Knowing that we needed to talk to one of our biggest users, we started with Northwest Soccer. They use our fields a lot. So we met with them, and we figured a new way to do this that it doesn't negatively impact them to the degree that it puts them out of business because they're a nonprofit. We don't want that. We just want to have a administrative fee to help cover our cost. So we settled on a $1 per field per hour that will escalate over 5 years to that $5 mark, so they can slowly absorb that into their fees and pass that fee through. I believe it's a needed fee. I know that fees aren't popular, but it's also a time where we need to recover some of those costs with the department, because we're having administrative fees as well as maintenance fees that are derived by these. And if you're willing to use the parks as if you're willing to use the parks without having a fee and just show up and hope it's open, it's free. Only if you want to guarantee that open space for yourself. Our research shows that that fee is not new to the field, the profession, or even to the metro. West Des Moines charges $10 per hour per field of unimproved field, just open space to do this. So.
I'm sure Matt can answer any questions for any of you that have questions or concerns. Jeff, did you have your questions answered?
Sure did. Thank you.
May I have a motion from the board for approving the recommendation?
I move it.
Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Nolan.
Yes?
Ogle.
Yes.
Club.
Yes.
Pacto.
Yes.
Kenny Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Passick.
Yes.
Danza.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Feltner.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Boson.
Yes.
Simonson.
Yes.
Thank you for another unanimous vote.
For those interested in our fees are always somewhat interesting to the public. We are also going to go on to December 23rd meeting next Monday here at 5 o'clock. City Council is the final authority to approve fees. We have a numerous amount of fees that we're making changes to, and that's our normal protocol. If you're out there tonight watching on TV or in the audience, that this type of year we try to spend the last 2 months working on fees. That way when we start the new year, we start with fresh fees. All right, next I have a presentation from Mindy Moore on a project that's been in the queue for some time. It's had a tremendous amount of public input, and she's going to provide you all the updates and what's been going on with the Southwest 14th Street Quiet Street project proposal.
This is something new that has not been brought to you before, and at the executive committee the other night, we decided to move it forward for board action. So this is your first chance to see this.
Good evening, Chair Nolan, members of the board. I'm Mindy Moore, Park Planner 2, and I'm going to give a brief presentation on the Southwest 14th Quiet Street project. I'll go over a little of the background, the purpose of the project, and the process that we've come to through up till today. I'll go through each of the elements that are proposed for the Quiet Street and what our next steps are.
First of all, the idea for a quiet street really all stemmed from looking at our trail system. This is a map of the existing and proposed trails. All of the purple lines are existing trails, and the pink dashed lines are future trails. And as you can see from the map, the trails kind of tend to follow our rivers and our greenway system. So when we start to look to see how people can connect to the trail system, connect into the neighborhoods and get to places where they live and they work and they recreate and shop, we need to look to our on-street network. So a few years ago, we hired Alta Planning and Design, who are leading bicycle planning consultants, to help us develop a bicycle and trail master plan. And they came up with a proposed on-street network. And one of those items in the on-street network was the quiet street for Southwest 14th Street. And you can see how this connects then. The red line here is the quiet street. It connects, here's Grace Lake and downtown, and here's Fort Des Moines and the Blank Park Zoo and the golf course. So when we zoom into that area, you can see more of what those amenities are. The trail system and Grace Lake Park and Waterworks to the north. The new Southtown Trail has been constructed, that part is done. The quiet street would follow down Southwest 14th and then head over to the zoo and Fort Des Moines. And also on this map, you can see the other red lines are additional bicycle facilities that would one day in the future be developed on the street system. So you can really start to create a network. So now you're wondering, well, what is a quiet street? I haven't really told you what it is yet. Well, it's not a trail and it's not a bike lane. It is where bicycles and motorists share the same space on the street. So we use pavement markings, signage, and traffic calming elements to establish a bicycle-friendly corridor. So generally speaking, the purpose is to encourage the traffic to drive the speed limit and to increase the driver's awareness of bikes and pedestrians on that street. And in this picture, you can see the bicyclist, and that pavement marking is called a shared lane marking, or a sharrow. So up till today, we've had several meetings. Actually, when we did our bicycle and trail master plan, we went to each of Watrous South and Grace Lake neighborhoods and told them about the bicycle master plan, and also told them about the Quiet Street project in particular, saying that this is coming at some point in the future. And we did apply for grants to fund the Quiet Street, and we did get a state recreational trails grant to help fund that project. So in 2012, we had a couple of open houses about this project, and then after the open houses, we met with Grace Lake and Watrous South, small committees from each one of those neighborhoods, and then last month we presented the plan. And here's just another way to kind of look at the process that we've been through. The public open houses in summer of 2012, we went over the purpose of the Quiet Street, this whole toolbox of things that you could do to develop a quiet street, and we got feedback from the residents. Then we worked on developing the concept with the neighborhoods, with other city staff, and with our partners. So we had not just, it wasn't just me, but our consultants, as well as traffic and transportation, public works, fire, police, DART, community development, and the schools and the zoo. You know, we really brought everyone's feedback into this project, and then revised the plan again. And you can see that loops back up because we had to go over that a few times before we get things right. And then we presented the final plan in November. At those open houses we had in the summer of 2012, the biggest thing that we heard from the residents was they were concerned about speed. People tend to exceed the speed limit on the street. One of the other concerns we had was parking. There is parking along the street, and they were concerned that they were going to lose parking. The proposal doesn't propose to remove parking. The only areas that parking would be restricted is where we have a traffic calming element, which is a mid-block median or an island, a traffic island. That's the only place where you wouldn't be able to park right next to the island. Another concern was sidewalks. There's some sections that do not have sidewalks. The issue with our funding for this, the State Recreational Trails Grant funding does not allow us to use that funding for construction of sidewalks, so that's not part of this project. Another concern was how to cross at Park Avenue. Park Avenue doesn't have a stop sign or a light for people on Park. Only people on Southwest 14th have to stop. So there was concern about how to safely cross that street. So I'll show you what we came up with for that. But throughout the corridor, there are the shared lane markings like I showed you the photo of earlier. Those are helpful because they help bicyclists ride in the correct spot in the street. A lot of times bicyclists ride too far to the right. If there's parked cars, you can be in what we call the door zone, where you can get doored by someone coming out of a parked car. Sometimes bicyclists ride on the wrong side of the road. They're actually safer if they ride with traffic. And where they are most visible to traffic. So it encourages that proper cyclist behavior and heightens the awareness of cyclists to motorists because they see these pavement markings in the street. Another thing throughout the corridor is wayfinding signage, and this is helpful because it directs the bicyclist to use a safer route. So someone maybe not knowing exactly where they're going, they might want to use Fleur Drive, and maybe that's not as safe, so we want to direct them to use Southwest 14th instead. It helps to identify attractions along the way. So you can see how far away is Grays Lake, and how it also has an estimate of how long it would take you to bicycle there. So you can look at the mileage and then how much time you might need to allocate for that. Also throughout the corridor, there are speed feedback signs. So at 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, the speed will flash at you, and at 10 miles per hour over, it will say slow down and flash that at you. So that helps to increase the driver awareness of their speed and improves compliance with the speed limit. So this is our proposal for the intersection at Park Avenue. There is a school crosswalk at Park and Southwest 14th, and we're proposing to add the overhead signage that says state law, yield to pedestrians, so that helps bring some more visibility to that crosswalk there. These are the median islands that I mentioned. There are 5 of them proposed throughout the corridor at Thornton, Cary, Lewis, Kenyon, and Peyton. And these also help because traffic has to slow down to navigate around the island. They're about 8 feet wide in the center and about 4 feet wide at the end, so they slow down to kind of go around it. And then the outside curb would be widened towards the houses or towards the sidewalk if there's a sidewalk to be sure that there's sufficient room for vehicles to pass around there. So this is the only instance where there wouldn't be parking allowed right next to the island. And you can see we were practicing with DART in that photo, having DART practice go around the cones to make sure that they could navigate that. And another amenity would be a countdown crosswalk at McKinley Avenue, so that just helps pedestrians and bicyclists know how much time they have to cross the street. At Wright Elementary, we're proposing a raised crosswalk. So this is just really, there's an existing crosswalk there that has in the before picture you can see it has the painted stripes and there's a signal there. What we're proposing is to raise that about 6 inches. That's helpful because then the children are also 6 inches taller. They're a little bit easier to see. And it really helps slow down the motorists that are really speeding because they have to go up and over this raised crosswalk. It is flat on the top, so it's not like a speed bump that you have to slow down really, really slow, but it's going to get those high-end speeders. There's another island proposed on Southwest 9th Street, and this would prevent left-hand turns onto Rittenhouse. The other benefit of it is that it provides kind of a pedestrian refuge for people who are coming from Rittenhouse to the zoo or from the zoo going back into the quiet street. So as you're crossing the street, you could, if you needed to wait for traffic, you could wait right here, and there would be a curbed island here, so you feel a little bit safer there. And then this is the zoo entrance on this side here. In your packets, you have the entire proposed plan. This is just the north half. So you can see where each one of these elements is proposed along the corridor. There's little call-out boxes for each one of the elements that I talked about. And here's the south half. And this plan, as well as this presentation, are also on our website, so the folks in the audience or at home can view this up close on their computers as well. So after tonight, this project will go to City Council in January, and Council will hopefully approve it so that we can move forward. And then engineering will do design detail over the next few months so that it can be constructed this summer. Our grant funding has a deadline of October of 2014. So if there are any other questions?
Mindy, how does the islands affect snow removal on those streets?
We worked with Public Works as we designed this project as well, and Public Works can just navigate right around them to remove the snow.
And what are the benefits of islands instead of speed bumps or the raised walkways that you had shown?
The city's policy right now is that raised crosswalks only go at school crossings, so we're being consistent with that policy. Speed bumps, There's other issues with delay. Well, one thing with the noise of going over them, that was one concern, especially with DART buses and things. As they go over them, they make noise. They seem to be not quite as accepted by the public as well as by some of the other city staff. So it wasn't, they're effective at slowing people down, but
And cost-effective wise, wouldn't they be, speed bumps or be a little more easy to put in than these islands and maintain in the future?
I don't know that they would be easier to maintain or put in.
Cost-wise, they're less expensive. Speed bumps are, but from the public processes that were held, that was one of the comments we did get, was they would rather see something like.
Through that public process, did we approach the people that already have islands in their streets on boulevards and stuff about those issues that are there right now?
You know, we just took general comments from everybody. We showed them the plan, and I want to drill home a point here that this project really didn't start with staff. And you saw in your communications, board members, you're privileged to this, and people in the audience on TV may not see this, but, you know, back in the 24th of this last month, on June 24th of 2013, the neighborhood brought a project together to us. So we just listened to what they wanted. And these projects, when they're new, they're hard to conceptualize. We do our best to try to put something out there, as you know, and I'm hitting your point here, I hope, that hits the majority. We're never going to hit everybody, but we hit the majority of what we can. So if there's concerns, let us know, and we can try to make some comments.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, that you're never going to please everybody. Yeah. I understand that portion of it. But safety-wise, I still have concerns with these islands, and as far as snow plows, and working, I know that you've talked to city staff. I also know that they're going to do their best, but I'm worried about us creating an island of ice. Mm-hmm. And that's not really an issue during the winter for bicyclists, but it is for people driving their cars. It is also for the people that have yards and have in this neighborhood. They don't want cars in and up in their front yards because they're not driving the speed limit. Yeah, you have to understand. I understand what the speed limit is, but that guy going down the street may not care one bit what the speed limit is, especially if he's a high school driver that lives in the area. They're going to be going fast. They're going to miss the speed bump. They get it up in somebody's front yard. And I haven't looked at how closely these houses will be towards the islands, but that'd be a real concern of mine if I lived in that neighborhood. What kind of protection are you providing my house, the front of my house, from somebody going 35, 40 miles an hour and not being able to navigate an island?
That's a really fair comment, and we met with the traffic and transportation experts in the engineering division. We met with police. We met with public works, and all of those internal city functions have agreed that, you know, we have to design around law-abiding citizens. And I get your point, not everybody abides by the law, but that's the best we can do is design around those things. And first and foremost, we don't want to have anything that's unsafe out there. We don't. We want everybody to have safety first. We want to help. That's where this all came from, is to slow people down. That was the number one negative feedback, which we were trying to achieve results to slow people down. So I guess I have to agree with you that there's some concerns there. However, I think we've done our best to design around those concerns.
Yeah, I know that you've gone through the process. I understand that. I just want people out there to understand. Absolutely. These questions are leading you down a path that you've done your due diligence. The only other question I have, or comment I have, did you look into those flashing signs that we have up by the state capitol for crosswalks on Park Avenue that we had talked about in the executive?
I spoke with Jennifer Bohawk, she's the city's traffic engineer, about those. And she said generally they try to reserve them for crossing more than 2 lanes, so a larger crosswalk. But she didn't rule it out either. She said, you know, probably we would wait and see how this worked and see if it was really warranted over time. It's something that can always be added, but she was kind of trying to set a standard for on that short of a crossing that they wouldn't be needed.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
These islands seem to be a little bit different than some islands that we're familiar with in the city, in that it's not an island within the contained street. The street actually bumps out a little bit too. Right. Is that correct?
Right.
So that makes a slight difference in how the island would be handled.
Quick question. Are these the same types of islands that you have on, I think it's 41st Street?
42nd
Street. Is it 42nd?
Both 41st and 42nd have.
It's the same idea, but these are much larger. The island there is pretty narrow and kind of
I was just saying, there's hardly any deviation there at all. I mean, there's, which is,
We heard that comment a lot in the meeting, so the street is widened where these meetings are. If you look at your plan, you can kind of see just the rendering. But tell me if I'm wrong too, Mindy, you have better detail on this. They're raised too, they have a little bit of a higher concrete curb, if you will. Is that
well,
correct?
they're not completely designed yet.
Yeah, but
they are
that was the
curved,
concept,
yeah.
though.
Yeah, the other thing about the islands, as far as the benefits, and something that we did hear back from the residents, was the ability to landscape them. They really liked the idea that they had trees in them. The trees themselves are a traffic calming element as well as a neighborhood beautification component.
The one on 42nd Street is just like a time bomb.
It's just like something
It's
put in the
just there,
road.
and I don't have a problem with them on, 2-lane streets, 4 lanes. If we could start there. And have you talked with DOT and their safety folks up there and the information they have on these? Because I know, as an assistant attorney general way back when they first tried them, some lawsuits that were a problem because of it. But on a 4-lane, 2 lanes on each side, I don't think, like going out Park Avenue or going out Fluor, it's not a problem. And if we could start with the 4-laners and see how they go, but sometimes on a 2-laner, all of a sudden they just jump out at you. And then when you have people riding bicycles and more bicycles, folks ride in groups, and then you've got a car on a single lane with the bicycles, it can be a real problem. It can be a safety problem.
Mindy, I'm sorry.
No.
Mindy, as we have, looks like we're going to have some speakers come up. Can you put it back, while the speakers are talking, back to the road, the overall route section there? Or
Yeah, there's a north half and south half, so that's the north half there.
Okay. So they can explain as they come up. I do want to emphasize what Ben said earlier. This was a neighborhood, it started out as a neighborhood project, and I think the Parks and Recreation Department has just worked with the neighborhoods on this. The feedback I'm hearing has been positive, and I know there will be some negative, but the feedback I hear is positive, and it's just a matter of Park and Recreation and Ben and his staff working with the neighborhoods on what they wanted, much like if you wanted a new park in your neighborhood. So.
Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak or ask questions to this issue? If you would you please come forward? And would you state your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Jerry Bradley, 4605 Southwest 15th. In listening to some of the comments being made tonight about this quiet street, I think some of the safety concerns are well taken, but I think there's some things that I think are kind of unique. One is we talk about our neighborhood associations getting together and being in favor of this particular plan, but certainly by no way, shape, or means a scientific study or request, but in talking to many of the people in the area, and I was born and raised in the South Side. I come from a very large family on the South Side. I know pretty much every street over there. Graduated from Park Avenue, Lincoln High School, so believe me, I understand the area that we're talking about. But in speaking to a majority of the residents that I have spoken to, and that's been quite a few, the vast majority are not in favor of this quiet street. Their concern is speeding, but it is not a quiet street. Their concern is to figure out something to slow the traffic down. And I don't think putting bicyclists, center medians, and situations like this is the way to do it. The vast majority of speeders, and I know for a fact because I've traveled from where I work to Lincoln on numerous occasions, and I know where most of the speeders come from. They are young adults. And a lot of the speeding takes place on Southwest 14th at night. I can hear it from where I live. I back up to that street by the church. Another question is the cost to install this. We talk about all of these things that Des Moines wants to do, and we've talked about the situation with our franchise fee problem, and we talk, how much is it going to cost? And I have not heard a legitimate estimate of what it's going to cost to build these, and then not only cost to build them, but what's it going to cost to maintain them? What happens and what is the projected usage of this particular project? Do we have a situation where the needs of a few outweigh the wants of the many? And I think this is a legitimate question that has to be asked. When you take a look at Cassidy Drive is dangerous at any occasion, going northwest or southeast. You come up Cassidy Drive, you go down Cassidy Drive, that is a small 2-lane street. And I don't care what you do to it other than widening that street, and if you want to spend that kind of money to do so, let's see if the people on Cassidy Drive are willing to pay an assessment. But I just cannot see bicyclists going up or down Cassidy Drive. And Cassidy Drive is a pretty good hill. So you have to be a pretty serious bicyclist to go up that hill. The second question is what happens if we spend all this money, put all this signage, put all these markings in, and all of a sudden we found it's not being used? That maybe we have 4 or 5 bicyclists a week go down it. What do we do then? Do we go back and do we recoup our cost of putting in these medians? And as you mentioned, Mr. Thornton, on Fleur Drive, those are beautiful medians. And it's nice because it's an entryway into our city. But they also are dangerous because you cannot see the other lanes of traffic when you try to cross Fleur Drive. True. And so, in one of my future lives, I was a safety engineer, a certified safety professional, and I've done these type of studies. And these type of things are not safe because they create a false sense of security, but they create blind spots. Also, the picture on what the young lady showed on Park Avenue and Southwest 14th, I don't recognize that. It didn't look like the street that I go back and forth on a lot of occasions. And plus, getting across Park Avenue on certain times, it's dangerous for somebody that's got a car, let alone somebody with a bicyclist. I guess at the end of the day, if I were to make a statement, it would be, you know, when we've had these meetings, and we've had open meetings, I remember going to one at the church, and everybody that went to that meeting was totally upset because they thought it was going to be an open forum where they could talk about this and express opinions, but that didn't happen. It was basically a dog and pony show about this thing that was going to happen on Southwest 14th. And the only other thing I think that I would like to mention, if this does come in front of the city council, I know that the latest representative that was appointed to take, I think, Brian Meyer's seat is the chairman of the Des Moines Bicyclists Association, and I would like to think this comes up for a vote, that person would recuse themselves from voting on that simply because of conflict of interest. But I've been in the area a long time. I know it. I have nothing wrong with bicyclists. We have a tremendous amount of trails in this city. I think they serve an outstanding purpose. But Southwest 14th, I just cannot see it being a safe environment to mix traffic and bicyclists together. I think we're asking for a problem, and I think that there should be other considerations, if possible. I mean, if we have bike lanes on Ingersoll, and Ingersoll is a well-traveled street, why not Southwest 9th? Those are my comments. I'll be glad to entertain any questions you should have them. Thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you, Jerry.
Vinny's leaving?
Hello, I'm John Cacciatore. I live at 1700 Cassidy Drive. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I support the Quiet Street. I live on the Quiet Street at 1700 Cassidy Drive. I think it's a wonderful opportunity not only to calm and slow traffic, and the gentleman's right, there's a lot of traffic on Cassidy Drive that goes too fast. But there are also bicyclists that are on Cassidy Drive since the Grays Lake connector trail that Ms. Moore pointed out was developed, that we saw as we live on the street through our windows, and when I drive on the street, we have bicyclists already utilizing Cassidy Drive and Southwest 14th. As a city project and as a resident and a lifelong resident of the south side of Des Moines as well, it'll be more attractive to young people to be a part of this neighborhood, both neighborhoods. It'll potentially attract more folks to this part of the city, which I think is valuable and needed if we want to continue to grow the city and not just the suburbs. So I think that is an asset that you all should consider, and I encourage you to. And as a resident, selfishly, it'll increase our property values. I think that's a good thing for the city as a whole, as well for those neighborhoods, the older neighborhoods. The house I live in is a 1945-50 era house. It's not a new house. The property is a good property. Most of the properties along this area are nicely kept, well-maintained properties. This will help increase those values, and I think that's a good thing for all the taxpayers. So I appreciate your consideration of this. I think it's a unique opportunity for our city to add something of value to the south side of Des Moines, which, by the way, doesn't always get a lot of attention from the city, in my view. I think this is a positive bit of attention, and I hope that you support it, and I hope the city council supports it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Castro, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a, as I remember going up Cassidy Drive, must be a hearing impaired child that lives there. Is there a hearing impaired sign there
Yes.
for kids?
Yes.
Now, I would like to, I know this is strictly speculation, but has that had an effect or impact on cars slowing down as they went up that hill and stuff, do you think?
Oh, it might have for a few days, Mr. Davis, but not long term.
Okay, okay. And then
question.
Bicycles negotiating the hill there on Cassidy Drive. The previous speaker talked about that being difficult.
I see bicycles going up and down, and
Okay.
I've ridden my bicycle up that hill.
Okay.
It's some work. It's a hill. But folks who do it and folks who bicycle routinely and want to utilize, we see folks riding their bicycles with backpacks during the work week now that we didn't see before. Folks were riding their bikes to work.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm sorry, I didn't ask for any other questions. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Why couldn't I do the experimental basis, try it a couple of places?
Ms. Noland, members of the board, I'm Max Nauer. I'm a resident of Watrous South Neighborhood Association, a member of the association. I do not speak as a member of the board right now, though I am. I speak rather as a resident. And Jerry Bradley's characterization of a meeting as virtually everybody opposed was his own characterization. I would contest that because as we have had more exposure as a neighborhood association to this quiet street proposal and have had the opportunity to have greater inputs, we've allayed a lot of concerns. And the idea that Mr. Bradley put out that medians are dangerous, that is countered or contradicted by the DOT's own studies. So, of course, anything that he would say, I would say at this point, is purely anecdote or is not of a professional nature or study, so I'd leave that up to you. What I see here and what I believe residents like about this project is just what Mr. Cacciatore indicated. This is something that will improve the neighborhood for the future, and it will be attractive to younger families. It will also make it a safer place for those of us of my generation who like to walk or are enjoying riding our bicycles. In fact, my wife and I in '77 chose to live in that neighborhood in part because it was a great bicycling neighborhood. So I would hope that you would simply move this on for further development and to the council. And while our new council member does have a history and association with this project, perhaps, I would hope that he would not recuse himself, because this is an important project in improving our, I think, our city, and especially our neighborhood on the south side. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Max? Thank you. Once again, we appreciate public comment so very much. Are there any questions from the board? Oh,
There's somebody.
sorry?
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
My name is Kitty Westenauer, and I live at 4503 Wakanda Parkway here in Des Moines. And I'm privileged to speak before you this evening. Don't let that fool you. Arthritis has eaten every joint I own, and I'm replacing them. It will make me an even better cyclist. I cannot tell you how thrilled I have been that this will someday become a reality for a number of reasons. Number one, there is no direct connection from the neighborhood that we live in to get to Grays Lake without having to do some crazy things. And let me tell you about some of those crazy things. I have ridden up and down Fleur Drive on my bicycle. There were days when I had my kids in a burley because I would pick them up from daycare as I came from Merrill Middle School as a teacher to come home and to go to school. So we talking back in the day, because the kids are 36 now, all right? You talk about that Cassidy Hill, wonderful hill. I cannot tell you how many hundreds of times I have ridden up and down that hill. And I cannot tell you how many hundreds of times my oldest son and I have ridden up and down that hill. Having completed 30 RAGBRIs, Southside is a great place to train for hills of Iowa. The other thing is, we talk about, and we continue to live in that neighborhood, and we want others to continue to live in that neighborhood. It is a wonderful neighborhood, but we need to make it accessible to everyone. We need to slow folks down on Southwest 14th Street, and it is not all of Southwest 14th Street that people speed on. What has been planned here will make for a very wonderful living condition for young folk, and yes, even for us old folks, because at 65, I'm not giving up my bicycle. And I think it's important that we continue to provide those amenities in our neighborhoods that cause people to want to continue to live there, but come and be a part of that neighborhood. I say, let's move forward with this. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Kitty? Thank you. Did we have another speaker? Yes.
Madam Chairman, members of the Park Board, my name is Thomas Renda, and what I have not heard anybody on Southwest 14th come in and either before or against it. Cassidy Drive is an extension of Southwest 14th. To give you background, as of today, if it wasn't for me 30-some years ago, with Johnny Belizzi and Pete Cavero and Bob Scott and Russ Levine, and by the way, Russ Levine and Bob Scott voted no for everything, except for the street between Park Avenue and Watrous. Wakanda came in at the hearing and was against it, but I got it paved, $12,000. Now, I'm not against bicyclists. I've rode a bicycle myself, and I wouldn't mind them if they just put bike lanes down there and let people ride it, because you're still going to have people speeding up and down that street. The speed limit was 25 at one time, and George Flagg's secretary got a ticket going 35 and a 25. So he raised the speed limit to 30 miles an hour. So that speed limit between Park Avenue and Watrous is 30 miles an hour, thanks to Bob Scott. So I see that they're going to put an island on Thornton. You know, 30 years ago, they were supposed to pave the street, on the west side or the east side of Southwest 14th, and they never did. But I live at 3601. I have sidewalks, and I lived at 1350 Thornton, and that's when I got the street paved. And the dirt and the dust was so bad for 2 years, it was unbelievable. And I think that, personally, I don't know about the islands. I didn't like the, let me give you a history. When I first was a South Sider, there was islands down Fleur Drive. Because they were unsafe, they tore them all out. And then 25 years later, they put them back. So I'm just kind of undecided, because if they put the island on Thornton, that's going to affect me that lives at 3601, and I know how big it is. And personally, I'd rather have them just put in bicycle lanes rather than to go through all that expense, or send them down Fleur Drive, because they got to stop at Army Post, they got to stop at Porter, they got to stop at Watrous, they got to stop at Park Avenue, they got to go down Cassidy Drive and go across Thomas Beck Road. I think that's more dangerous than if they just put bicycle lanes down Fleur Drive. I heard that this young lady here that spoke has ridden down Fleur Drive. No matter where you ride, you're going to be at risk. And 200 pounds don't mix with 6,000, as I know. So I'm just kind of against this quiet street when I think there are other alternatives. And a speculation that it's going to raise the price of your home, I don't think so. I really don't. But anyhow, I just wanted to voice my opinion and tell you a little bit about the history, because if it wasn't for me, we'd still be driving down a dirt road between Park Avenue and Watrous. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Your Honor.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but thank you.
So you're saying in certain situations, be selective on where they might put them, assuming they do it.
Right, right.
Okay.
Right.
And I agree with you on that, and with some foresight. Second question is, did you dismiss Flagg's secretary's ticket?
No, I wanted to put her in jail, but I didn't get it. But I didn't get it, or I would have gave him a bad time. But I don't know what happened to the ticket.
Okay.
But all I know is that's why they raised the speed limit to 30 miles an hour and 25.
That's good to see you, Bart.
Anybody else have any questions?
I hear you say that, Mr. Renda, you're for the bike lanes. You have no problem with the bike lanes. It's the island placement is where you have the concern.
Right, and I don't think you're going to stop the kids from speeding.
Yeah.
And we have another problem, that since there's no sidewalks, we've got joggers, we got walkers, we got people with dogs that walk up and down that street between Park Avenue and Watrous. And I don't know, you know, they're going to have to jump out of the way, get on the parking. It just seems like it's going to be an inconvenience for a few people. And I'm surprised not more people on Southwest 14th aren't here. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions that Mindy might answer for you?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
My question, when I heard about there was no sidewalks in certain areas, should that not be a priority along that street? I mean, is that part of the plan to put sidewalks everywhere?
Let's have Mindy answer that. Mindy's looked into the sidewalk concerns.
You have a long stretch between Park Avenue and Watrous, which is Wakanda. And Wakanda, I'm not sure how much of the west side of Southwest 14 is owned by the city, but there is no sidewalk from Park Avenue on the west side all the way to Watrous. And on the other side of Watrous, then you have a sidewalk that goes all the way south.
Chair Nolan, regarding the sidewalks, this particular project, the funding is not allowed to be used for the installation of sidewalks, so we can't do that with this project. The city has a sidewalk policy where you get signatures of the abutting property owners, and then they are assessed for a portion of the cost of the sidewalk. I know the Grays Lake Neighborhood Association has finished their neighborhood plan. They do believe sidewalks are a priority in their neighborhood, but they have to go through that policy process to get those put in.
So how much of this stretch would you say has sidewalks?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head. I
Just
know,
curious,
we have that
because to me, it's-
information, but
That's kind of the basic priority.
Well, Wendy, or Mindy, let me ask you this question. As I look at this, there's only one island proposed that I can see, you know, from Cassidy Drive, if you will, or Park Avenue, if you will, all the way to, what is that, Watrous? There's only one island in there that's proposed in there. And Jerry, I do agree that is, you know, right in there, Wakanda, and it's by your area, Tom, but that's the only island. You have one island proposed in there. Is that correct?
that's correct. This plan shows one island.
And that is the low variety island and not the plant island?
It could be a landscape
Okay,
island.
so those are still open as to
Right,
what
the,
type of
the
island?
detailed design work has not been done. The other thing is, there was a resident on Cassidy who requested an island, so we are looking into seeing whether or not we could add an island on Cassidy as well.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mindy, is there a reason why we don't know what the islands, I mean, I guess I wonder why this is brought to us before we know the height of the islands and stuff, because in terms of safety, that
Sure.
is an issue.
Normally, this project wouldn't even maybe have to come to you or go to council even. We would go through with the design, and the design would go to council. Because there was some concern when we did the open house project, the open house, we decided that we would go through an extensive public process for the conceptual part of the plan before we went on to that detailed design work. So that detailed design work is coming, but we wanted to get through a substantial public process first.
So once that specific design work is done, does it have to come back to anybody for?
Only for
approval?
hiring a contractor.
Oh, so
The board only really rules on conceptual plans. The council will then takes it from there.
But what I'm asking is, once the design specifics are available, will it go to council or somebody so they can look at height of? Does somebody have some approval once we know what those islands are going to look like? That's what I want to know.
I guess, in some ways, yes, they approve that project going out to bid, so they can review that project. They don't say.
That's right. So the council gets design details in their packets, should they want to. We rarely see
Okay.
them question, but yes, they do get.
So somebody could look at the design and say, that's too high, or it should be lower.
Staff
Right.
do that.
Well, our
Yes, one of
staff,
the things we'll do is we'll talk to anybody that wants to. We have everybody's information. Let's presume two things with my answer here. Presume it moves forward.
Yeah.
What we'll do is, anybody that was interested in any element, most likely we'll take the medians for this example and say, okay, if it's right in front of your house and you want details, we're gonna show you how much of your front yard you're going to lose in the right of way, which is city property, but where we make the road wider, and how high the median is, and what it's gonna look like. So those details happen after we get the goal, because otherwise we're spending money maybe we shouldn't have spent because we've hired a consultant, we've hired an engineer. So
We-
get the green light first from council, then we design.
our engineering staff too is working directly with those abutting property owners. They've already approached, I believe most if not all of them, to say, this is what we're proposing in front of your house or next to you.
So
They're
there
working
will
very-
be opportunities for input along the way.
Yeah.
The design. Thank you.
I don't know if Mr. Bradley had a question about the cost. The cost is estimated $225,000. Of that, $167,957 is remaining interstate recreational trails grant. So it's about $57,000 of our CIP budget that would be allocated to this project.
I'd like to talk to the usage too, and one of the important things for us is, numbers. We always try to have the best scientific data behind us that we can. We don't have numbers on the street because it hasn't existed as a dedicated quiet street or trail facility quite yet. So we look around, what's in the area. We also do the trail counts, as the board knows. Well, we know right now Grays Lake has 1 million visits per year. We know that the zoo is the Iowa Visitors Attraction of the Year, and then they just released their numbers of close to 450,000 people attending. Then we look at numbers such as traffic flows. I'm not going to quote those off the top of my head, but we can all agree that Fleur Drive has extreme traffic counts compared to Southwest 14th. So would Southwest 9th. So the concept of a quiet street, you want to find a less traveled route, and that parallels that route. Because as you see in the trail map in one of the earlier slides was, there's not a dedicated route that we think is the safest route for people to get on the south side between those two benchmark destinations. This hits that in the safest manner we have available to us. And if we were to build trails or anything else, remember, we build trails about $1 million per mile. This right here gets you a long section of new dedicated trail facility, not a trail, but a trail facility, for a very affordable price. And it hits the goals of the neighborhood leaders that have brought this to us and asked us to do this.
Mr. Cacciatore, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to address your question regarding the sidewalks, excuse me. The Grays Lake Neighborhood Association, predominantly the north part of the trail, in our planning process that has come before the council and you've approved, it's one of the top three, the sidewalk development is one of the top three priorities that we came to and presented to the council. So sidewalk development is important. It's not part of this specific piece, but it's very important, and it's something that we believe is important as a neighborhood as well.
I'm fairly new. I guess to my point too, a lot of it sounds like this, if just putting the bike lanes too, before you go into the islands or whatever, to get it slowed down, or the different stops, the way they had crosswalks and different things, being slowed down, the traffic, it seems like one of the reasons for the street, it's necessary too.
I just want to address that for the council.
Didn't the Grays Lake Neighborhood Association receive that NRB grant? What is it, the Neighborhood Revitalization Grant?
Yeah.
And I thought one of your proposals in there was the addition of sidewalks. There was supposed to be.
Correct.
Yeah, but I mean, and where does your neighborhood association end? Does it end on Watrous?
Watrous, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I just want to say one thing. I take up your time. I talked to the surveyors that were surveying Southwest 14th and Thornton. And I said, what are you guys surveying here for? We're going to put a turnaround there. That's what they told me. So I can only go by what they said. So what a turnaround is, they're going to put this here, and you got to go this way, and you got to go that way, and the people from Watrous to Park Avenue will not speed.
We'll hope to verify that right now, that there's no turnaround in this plan whatsoever. So they might have been confused, but I will tell you what we have today on this plan, I guarantee you, is what's
I
on the list.
understand that, but I just heard that
Yep.
there's no assurance of what the island's going to be.
Yeah, the islands won't be a turnaround.
Okay.
I promise.
You promised me that?
You promised me.
Okay.
They're called roundabouts. They're not called
Yeah, there's no
roundabouts. So you're telling us there's going to be no roundabouts?
There's no roundabouts. What you see in this plan exactly, which was the length and the 8 foot wide, the widest, those are the medians.
Mindy, where'd Mindy go?
She left.
Oh, well, I don't blame her. Would you put that Southwest 14th and Park Avenue? I think it was your second overhead picture. Keep that one right there. One of the speakers, Jerry, you said on the before picture, that's.
That is not Southwest 14th and Park Avenue.
That's Park Avenue looking west.
That's exactly the way I see it going home every night.
That's Park Avenue looking west.
You're looking
West.
west on there and not showing it from east, because I'm looking at it north-south, not
Okay.
east-west.
That's the south, that's the north.
This is looking west
Yeah, on Park Avenue.
on Park Avenue.
West down Park
On Park Avenue. So to enhance that, I don't see a lot of money, but I do see the pedestrian, you know, signs across there and, you know, painted walkways. I think that that does look, the bottom picture does look a lot safer.
Okay, if there are no new speakers, I think we should move forward.
Okay.
You've got one.
You need to come to the podium, please.
I'm Shirley Bradley, and I live at 4605 Southwest 15th, and I commute on Southwest 14th 2 to 4 times a day. I go home for lunch, go back downtown. I work at Baker Electric, have for 27 years. Drove over the Southwest Jackson Bridge, so I'm for that, preserving that. But I can see a lot of issues. We have been told that the median will be 8 foot wide, 8 foot wide, but we have not been told the length of those medians. I have no idea how long they are. We did go to the most recent meeting, and we're talking to some of the city engineers in regard to the fire hydrants and anything that has to do with maintenance or setbacks for the curbs or anything. The cost is not coming from the 200,000 fund, it's coming from the city funds, from what I was told. So the water department, and one water department will pay for the setback of all of the utilities. Well, what does that tell you? It goes on to the taxpayer, does it not? And also it doesn't state, and I realize that the frontage property next to the street is public, okay, it's city-owned. But how far will that go back on either side? That has not been elaborated on. Nobody's detailed that. Cassidy Drive is a beautiful drive. I love to drive down there. Never had any issues except for, and by the way, it's about a third again as wide as Southwest 14th. The only issue that I've ever had going down Southwest or Cassidy Drive is when people have their lawns mowed several times during the summer, and they park, the lawn maintenance people park their long vehicles on Cassidy Drive, on either side, all the way up and down, instead of driving in the private driveways. That I can see as, in the summertime particularly, as a huge obstacle. And if you look at the detailed drawings, the sketches, there are no medians down Cassidy Drive. So, but I can see that as a potential problem, because if there is an oncoming car, you can't hardly veer around that. You have to stop and wait for that other vehicle. I can't even envision a bike trying to maneuver around those. We do need a sidewalk. It's very important we need a sidewalk. I can't tell you how many times that people have gotten up on the curb walking. I've seen many more pedestrians than I have bicyclists going up and down. And if you look real closely, especially along Wakanda, there's all kinds of, there's a dirt path from where people have walked. And I've walked down it several times too. It's not always conducive to staying on there. It's more comfortable to be on the street.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll try to answer a few of those for you, and all that I've heard, and I'll do my best. If I miss one, just somebody remind me. First off, we realize that new things sometimes aren't as easy to understand or even be supportive of. Classic case is our entire trail system. I can't tell you that I was here for every trail mile that was built, but I can tell you that I've read the files in our department that the majority of every trail ever built was not usually the most popular thing. But shortly after it was built, the most wildest naysayers would come to the city and say, I was wrong. And we appreciated that, to tell us that. They all said, this did a lot for our community. It added to the economic development. So when we have something new like this, we do our best to get the best public input. And as you can see, one of the moments of pride I have in running this department is the fact that we spend a significant amount of time getting a lot of public input. If you go back to the slide, Rebecca, while I'm finishing my comments on the public input, all the different meetings we've held, I'll tell you that you have subcommittees that work for you in the city, one being the Traffic Safety Committee. The Traffic Safety Committee is not something that's housed in Parks and Recreation. We took it to them. They came back and they make a recommendation to adopt this as part of the plan. So those are the expert citizens that are appointed by city council members to make decisions on the safety of traffic, not the Parks and Rec Department, but we got their input. And you have a Trails Committee that's trying to manage their way through a bicycle and trails master plan. This was in that plan. It told us this is one of the first things you should do. This was the biggest priority in the plan, if I'm not mistaken. So we went to that committee. We went to both neighborhoods. We've hosted a significant amount of public meetings, as you can see right here. We did our best not to make this feel like it was rushed, because it was new. It was something that we would, of course, have never done. So we wanted to make sure that we had the best input forward for you as a board. But guess what? There's still one more group that gets the rule on this. There's the city council. And tonight, I think that you've heard some great comments on both sides. And I don't think that they're really a wrong side of anybody's comments. I just think that we need to move forward with the best possible recommendation and give us a try as a city. We won't know until we try this. And I think it's very, the word escapes me here, but it's a very conservative plan right now. I think it's something we can pull off, we can evaluate within a year. And for the funding sources, it is $255,000 project. I'm unaware of any utility costs. I can't see us, we're not really digging into the utilities. $167,000 of that is a grant. Again, it's a state grant, it's tax dollars. I don't want to mix words with anybody, it's still tax dollars. That $167,000 has to be used for this. That's what we told them we would do, is a quiet street. Not do we have to use the money, we could turn the money away and not do the project, but the neighborhoods have asked us to do the project. So we're really, at the end of the day, working with the leadership of those neighborhoods to make a decision. And I'll leave it at that with you as the board members to make your decision, and if you have questions, we'll do our best to answer.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Do I have a second? Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Or maybe discussion first. Once the
You
board
wanna have
closes the
some
public hearing.
Wasn't really a public hearing. Is there any other board discussion before we have roll call?
Yeah, I want to make a few comments. First of all, I'm a avid bicyclist, and I can tell you that it's a major, major problem that we don't have a safe route from the south side connecting to north side of Des Moines. And anyone that has ever been crazy enough to try and brave Fleur Street or Southwest 9 would know that those streets are completely inappropriate, will never be appropriate to mix bicycles with the car traffic. If you were to have bicycle routes, you'd have to basically build separate bike lanes. There's no way that with the traffic load that you could ever do that. So I think, there's not a lot of options, I think, if you're going to have a route from the south side. And for the cost is minimal for the bang that we would probably get out of this. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for a route like this, and I understand the devil's in the details, and there's some concerns maybe about some of these medians, how these islands would work. But I'm satisfied that city staff has went through a pretty long process, and I think it's important that we move forward with this, so I'll be voting in support of the staff recommendation.
Has there been a study, I work off of Ingersoll Avenue, and how many people actually use the bike lane? As I know, as driving a car, only having a single lane going in one direction, it's a lot harder to get in and off the side streets during rush hour, both in the mornings and the evenings. And I've seen more bikes on the sidewalks than I have seen in the bike lanes working down there.
Maybe you might have the best perspective to answer that.
For the past few years, we've participated in the National Bicycle and Pedestrian Documentation Project, and we've been counting the bikes and pedestrians on Ingersoll. I don't memorize all these numbers. We count in about 20 different locations. Ingersoll, I know, I want to say is around $167,000 a year, but I could be wrong. There is some information on our website about it, and I can certainly pull up the information and send it to Ben and have him send it to the board if you want to know the actual counts on Ingersoll. But there are a substantial number of bicyclists using it.
And Mindy, while you're up there, would you pull up that map? It's, I think, 4 back with the existing and proposed trails. That one.
That one has the trail on it.
That, because of that map and the fact that I live on First Street and I see the tremendous number of people coming down First Street and hitting Grace Lake, which is why, and hitting the Meredith Trail and the Grace Lake Trail, I see the number and I also hear them because I live downtown, talk to a lot of them. If you look at this map, this would be the only link really to the zoo and the south side. And so they have to go, once they hit Meredith Trail, they have to go east-west or then go to the Great Western Trail, which is a great trail. But I think it's a shame when you look at those lines, that there aren't any lines through the south side. And so for that reason, I would like to see this go forward, understanding that it has to be looked at by council and staff and whoever else is an expert on those things to make sure the medians are safe and that we're flexible to the needs that we see as we get closer to establishing those medians. But I really think that link is needed. So I'll be supporting it.
Are we ready for roll call? Rebecca?
Nolan.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Club.
Yes.
Facto.
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Passick.
No.
Thornton.
No.
Feltner.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Boson.
Yes.
Simonson.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you. And thank you again to the public for being here this evening. Let's go back quickly to the director's report.
Yes, I'd like to have Marlene come up and just give you a very quick PowerPoint on the tremendous and just great news we have with turning a financial subsidy into the right direction. It's still a subsidy, but we've made tremendous amount of effort and we've had great results at our cemetery operations. And this is timely because of the fact that, you know, we'll be approaching budgetary season again real soon here, and we'll be talking about areas of the operation that we can make more efficient. So without that, I'll have Marlene come on up.
Chair Nolan and members of the board, Marlene Anderson, Park and Recreation Supervisor. 2 years ago, at this time of the year, the city was going through an extensive budgeting process for the 2-year budget. And the municipal cemeteries became a lightning rod, really, for discussion in regard to the financial picture of the cemeteries. So a lot of changes have been made since then, and I'm here to give you an update on that financial picture. First of all, before I go into detail on the specific finances, I want to share some really great news about the sales at the cemeteries. In the past 18 months, which is since January of 2012, those 18 months compared to the previous 18 months that are listed here on the slide, there's been an overall 22.98% increase in sales of spaces. And of course, spaces end up bringing in more burials and things of that nature too. At the time, 2 years ago, when different operating changes were being considered, there was high concern for what the discontinuance of office staff, elimination of office staff in the facility at Laurel Hill Cemetery would bring in regard to the sales at that location. As you'll see here, that Laurel Hill Cemetery in the past 18 months has realized a 31.9% increase in space sales. At the same time, Elm Grove Cemetery, which is also on the east side The statistics have always been kept together for those two cemeteries. We've separated those at this point, and you'll see that in comparison to the previous 18 months, that's realized a 150% increase. The sales are fewer in that area, in that cemetery. It's a new cemetery to us. We had to take it over in 2007, and so it takes less to create a 150% increase. Of course, you would realize that, but still, we're increasing sales rapidly there. In fiscal year 2011, at the time that these budget changes were being considered, there was an operating subsidy of the cemeteries to the tune of $840,000. That equated to a 49% subsidy when you compare the operating expenses to the revenue that's brought in. The budget projections that were made at that point were for the subsidy to reduce to 47% in 1 year's time, or actually at the current year. That fiscal year was half over at that point. In FY13, the intent was to reduce it to 35%, and FY14, which is the current fiscal year, to reduce it to 33%. The way that that would be accomplished would be through these operating changes, such as condensing the operations into the Glendale site and then dispatching the cemetery staff to the 7 different cemeteries, for example, and also to reorganize the staff and create a director and then an operating manager, and so that reduced a lot of the upper echelon overhead, so to speak. Since then, the fiscal year results that were completed, for the fiscal year that was just completed June 30th, the operating expenses that were budgeted that have occurred are $123,000 less than what was budgeted. The operating revenue is $110,000 more than was projected, and the overall decrease in that subsidy is $234,000 more than was expected. So you see that great strides have been made. I want to stress to you that a lot of those changes were targeted in December and January of 2011 and 12. And so I really want to credit the management of the Parks Department for having determined a lot of those really tough to make decisions. And that's before I was involved in cemetery management. That's what I'm wanting to stress to you, okay? The fiscal year 2013 results then are that the $838,000 operating budget in FY11 has been reduced to $282,580. And the 49% taxpayer subsidy in FY11 has been reduced to a 21% taxpayer subsidy. There was a price increase that was implemented in the middle of April of this year, and that only had 12 weeks of impact on these changes. I want to emphasize that to you too. So what that means is that there's more great results to come. The impact of the price increase, which was considerable and really much later than it should have been, not on my watch, but previous years, since 2008, is going to have a further impact on that. So what that shows you here is the history of the cemetery subsidy. About 10 years ago, the Veteran Cemetery was developed, and a lot of the veteran burials that used to be in the cemeteries are now being out west in the Veteran Cemetery. And so that had a tremendous impact on the operating subsidy levels in the cemeteries. What you're seeing here is, first of all, that little red dash off to the right, that was what was projected, where we would be at this point. That's the upper dot on that little dash, okay? Instead, you see that we have, of course, as you saw in those statistics I just gave you, that it's about 15% less than what was projected. So this is the lowest it's been for 10 years, and hopefully you're going to see it go to that same level that it was at in, 1998 or so, or 2000 maybe. It's hard to see the years from here. Okay, so are there any questions or comments?
Marlene, you've done a great job. We really appreciate what you've done and what you've put into the interest of the cemetery.
Does this factor in the repair of the water lines?
No, the water lines are a capital budget item, and those aren't anywhere in our CIP because of the cost of them. Just the cost benefit ratio just doesn't pay off right now. Plus, as you can imagine, putting water lines back in to repair them, they're so old, you have to trench underneath burial sites. It's extremely big. Before we get too far down, I'd be remiss if we didn't thank Max Nauer. He's been the chair of the Cemetery Advisory Committee for some time and done great work for us. He's been at every turn for us. He's been at council meetings when we took fee increases. So, Max, thank you for your great leadership and helping us turn this thing around. Can you come on up to the podium so the TV? Thanks.
Cemetery Advisory Committee, just as the Parks Board, operates in much the same way that I'm sorry that Connie has left, that the Des Moines School Board does. We take the advice and we look upon the leadership of our management, and we act and nudge accordingly. And we have had exceptional management during the time that Marlene has been speaking of, in which budget has improved as much as it has. So while we do some nudging, we rely primarily upon our hired hands, and those people have done an exceptional job, and I want to thank them. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you, Max.
Any other questions?
Sales are up 22%. Is that something to cheer about, I guess?
Check your Obamacare.
All right. We have one more update. We'll make it quick, so we're approaching the 7 o'clock hour, and it's always our goal to get you out of here before 7, if not sooner. Just been working with a group of citizens in Des Moines to do some work, some great volunteer work as well, some staff efforts to clean up the woods at Grandview and make some nature trails. So I've asked Ron to show you some before and after pictures of what they've accomplished with staff and volunteers.
Chair Nolan, members of the Park and Recreation Board, Ron Ward, Park Manager. And as Ben said, we've got some comments from especially the northeast neighborhoods in some various meetings that we've had with them, and they had concerns about, this is looking along East 33rd, and just wanting the park department to do something to start cleaning that woods up. There's, if you're familiar with it, there's a lot of deadfall in there from various windstorms that there's been over the years. And so we actually first, with the help of an ecologist, came up with some goals that we wanted to do in the woods, and that's protection of the existing red oaks that were in there, and reduce the density of the second growth trees such as maple, hackberry, mulberry, provide openings in the tree canopy to encourage growth of the herbaceous layer and stimulate oak seedlings, removal of some of the major deadfall, of course keep working on the invasive removals, and educate the public and the park users about the woodlands and why we're working to improve them. And so we've done this, we've started working on this, we'll continue to work on this by opening up the oak tree canopy, and we're doing that by clearing out what's in the drip line of the oak trees. Some of these oak trees they figured out are over 200 years old, and so we're clearing out the other trees that are growing in the drip line of those, unless there's a nice oak tree growing in there that we can keep for the next generation. We're doing small tree removal, things 3-inch to 6-inch around. We're taking those out, the second growth trees, like I said, the maple, hackberry, mulberries, those type of things. We're removing the deadfall, and we're doing this with volunteers, which I've got a picture. This is what it looked like after some of our staff worked. We had three Saturdays in a row in November. We had work days out there, and a lot of people showed up from the neighborhoods. Total of, I think, about 60 hours of volunteer hours, cleaning out not only the deadfall and bringing that up, and then our crews hauled it away, but also cutting out the honeysuckle and some of the invasives in there. And then the other way we're doing it is with our own staff. We'll be working on it through the winter as we have time getting in there. So this would be a picture before, and then this is after, as our staff gets in there and starts working to clean it up. And we're using not only our park staff, but then the heavy equipment to come in there and help get the bigger stuff out. And we're only doing that when the ground is frozen and also with the track, equipment with tracks on it instead of tires, so it doesn't damage things as much. That's basically all I have.
Can you go back to your first slide?
Sure I can.
Just a nice and a very cost-effective way for us to add more park space is just reclaiming what we already have. As you see real briefly here, if you were wanted to be engaged, which we hear a lot of people do, into the woods again and get out there and be in nature, it's not very inviting like that. We call that when it's springtime and its leaves are on it, we call it the green wall. You just can't get in there. And we want to make sure that we get rid of the invasives, which are choking out the life of the good species, but also invite the public in there and build nature trails because, again, two things we hear a lot is more paved trails, more nature trails. This is a very cost-effective way to add that to the system at a low cost. Good work to Ron's team for using volunteers, too.
Thank you, Ron.
Oh.
Thank you. Good work. Is there any other questions for Ben, or is there anything else from the board?
Very quickly, in this Jackson Street Bridge had sparked a discussion about the need to update master plans or develop new master plans. I'm hoping at an upcoming board meeting, got a lot of new people on the board too, to maybe brief the board on the current master plans that are out there, how many of them are kind of completed and done, and moving forward, what the plans are for developing or updating our master plans throughout our park system.
And we ought to updo or redo or update parklands.
Yes. Susan's talking about an old comp plan that we had, and the comprehensive plan is for the whole system, parks, cemeteries, trails. If you look at the park plan from the early 90s that was completed, the park comp plan, it's played out, if you will. You've done a very good job. You've accomplished everything almost in that plan. And I appreciate Lloyd's comments because right now we're kind of in that in-between phase where we're taking things on and just doing small section plans on here where we'd love to have the big approach and look at things as a holistic manner as we can. But those things are very expensive. You know, we looked into the budget and they can range from $100,000 to $300,000 for a comp plan. We'd like to be able to budget for that because I think that gives us the best vision. And the thing that I know you'll appreciate is a comp plan really engages all members of the public. It helps everybody pick what they want for their quality of life amenities in their city as a whole. And so we need to get going on that. And we'll do our best to try to summarize what's out there right now, how many master plans we have on the shelf in case money becomes available. So we'll do all that. It might not be January, it might be February. That's a lot of work to put that together, but we'll try to do it soon. Oh, and thank you. Before you leave, as board members, we have some poinsettias again, and I want everybody to know that we grow those poinsettias with mostly volunteers, almost 100% volunteers. And those are grown in our greenhouse, and it's a gift for you for all your work this year, taking all those phone calls from the public for helping us make good decisions, and they're here to take on with you.
Is there anything else? I'd like to wish you all a happy holiday and a wonderful winter solstice, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I made it, 7.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
We do. We do. It's coming next month, by the way. Yep. Yep.